Hello and welcome to the AdTech Heroes podcast. In today's episode, we are going to talk about being a founder in AdTech, and I'm delighted to be joined by Gurman Hundal. Gurman is the co-founder and CEO of MiQ, which is one of the leading global programmatic media partners for marketers and agencies. He co-founded the company back in 2010, and it has grown from strength to strength and now has 19 offices worldwide. Hi Gurman, how's it going?
Very well, yeah. Looking forward to this. Thanks for having me.
Brilliant. No, really excited about talking about MiQ and talking to you about yourself and your journey in the media industry. I think that's a great place to start, really. So, should we start with MiQ and talk about what role it serves within the media industry?
Yeah, sure. So MiQ, as you said, is a leading global programmatic media partner for agencies. So effectively what we do is we execute programmatic campaigns on behalf of our clients who are advertisers we access via their agencies, whether they're the holding companies or independent agencies, or certain in-house brands who manage, I'd say, the agency functionality in-house and use us to execute. And our job really is to run the programmatic campaigns to hit the objectives of those campaigns. Um, and ultimately, I think we are used because of our sort of long-term expertise in programmatic, the quite diverse nature of got lots of ways in which we run programmatic advertising across lots of different devices, screens, lots of different targeting options. And I think we've established ourselves as a bit of a leader in not just performing and hitting objectives, but also onboarding new ways of doing programmatic advertising for our clients.
Amazing. And where did it all start?
Yeah, so I mean, look, when I was 19, I had to was at university. I had to do a work placement. This was like randomly got into digital advertising, online ad, which was very, very new back then. It was like 2003. Um, and there I joined a sort of old school ad network, 15 people that I met, who's now my business partner, Lee Puri there. And then I sort of stayed in the went back to uni then after graduated, I come back in. And I was always more very interested in the optimization side of how you can make a campaign work and things like that. And when I heard about programmatic, I was like, oh wow, like right now you've got like batches of inventory and you have to buy it and then you can't change it once you buy, you have to price the batch in one rate, not buy each impression. Um, and you have to sort of buy up front and you've got to limit it to what you've bought when you're running campaigns. And when I heard about programmatic, it was like, I'll rip that up. You know, there's no there's there's basically bid on every single ad and you don't have to make a commitment up front. And I was like, oh, this is a much more effective way of buying advertising for clients and actually a much more effective way of sellers selling their ad inventory. And I was like, this is going to be big. And that was sort of 2009. I started hearing about this sort of programmatic dream, as it was, from the sort of tech vendors who built the pipes, really. And that just led me and Lee to think, okay, let's go it alone, be one of the first programmatic companies in the UK.
And I mentioned you've 19 offices worldwide. I think 7, 8 different markets, and how has that journey been, kind of working across all the different markets? I'm guessing they all had their own kind of opportunities and challenges
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, we're actually in 10
Oh
countries
wow.
now, 30 offices. And what we found is certainly in markets like the US and even Australia, we have 5 locations now, is that you've got to be close to the clients and the regional cities, not just the main capital cities or main sort of economic hubs of those markets aren't always where all the action is. There's a lot of action in the regional markets. And we see programmatic is just easy to adopt in a lot of those countries, as because it's just more effective for publishers, more effective for buyers. We see different levels of adoption in terms of like how you can execute. So, some markets are a little bit more stuck in the desktop, mobile era, TV and out of home and radio hasn't really taken off programming, whereas in other markets that's the big growth engine and that's the trend. But then you get some markets like in Asia, for example, where consumers are just skip using desktops. It's all mobile, it's all in app and things like that. So you see the sort of different consumer habits are different in per market, and therefore the evolution of programmatic is at different stages per market. And probably the most it's a different market we operate to than all the others is China.
Mm.
It's just because the tech stack, the Western tech stack doesn't really work in China. So you have to work with local businesses. But what those local businesses do is similar to what the more well-known tech stacks that we're used to.
That makes sense, and I think that's what I've heard as well. China's always a beast in itself, and when you talk to partners and even agencies and agency hub teams, and you ask them what markets do you cover, they're always talking about the European markets, APAC, but they always exclude China. So it's definitely something that I've seen across the board. Really, it's a beast in itself, and I think only maybe a handful of people have made it a success there. How receptive has the industry been to MiQ? From thinking back to your early days, did you, were there, some people maybe looking at you as a founder? I'm guessing the team started off really small. Were some people kind of looking at you and thinking, no, it's just not going to work? And how has that progressed over the years?
Yeah. There's always people are skeptical when things are going to change. So when you say, there's this new way of buying advertising, it's called programmatic, it's going to be much more efficient. Naturally, people who are doing well the old way go like, well, why do we need to change? It's great. But so I think there was that natural suspicion of programmatic, which then obviously went into MiQ. Um, and I think there was definitely a suspicion on, why is a managed service programmatic vendor needed? It sort of morphed to that when agencies, in particular the big holdcos, started investing quite heavily in their own internal solutions, their internal trading desks. Um, but our view was that there's always a place for someone who can perform. There's always a place for someone who can deliver great service. And more importantly, we always thought programmatic will evolve and the ecosystem will actually get more complex and more broad. And that's going to need a vendor to help navigate that ecosystem and be quick, be quick to adopt new ways of integrating programmatic to buying ad slots wherever they are. And so we always sort of knew we'd have a space as long as we performed, as long as we delivered great service, and as long as we innovated faster than the rest.
And is it literally, like, you make it sound so simple? Is it literally that simple? If you get the service right, you get the product right, you have those relationships with the clients, you can make it a success. And you're obviously not the only programmatic platform out there, but you're clearly up there in terms of kind of your exposure across all the different markets and your expertise and the talent that you're always getting. On LinkedIn, I'm always seeing all the top talent moving to MiQ. So yeah, how do you come about being there and getting to that place?
Yeah, the simple one. Like I always used to say this, like in London, I mean, everyone who works in the media landscape in London, lunch is on Charlotte Street, right? And it was always like, why would you open a restaurant on Charlotte Street? It's full of restaurants. And I would always say, well, that's where everybody goes to eat. So that's the exact place you want to open a restaurant. If you open that restaurant with slightly innovative food, really good taste and value for money, and you back it up with great service, people are going to go to your restaurant no matter if there is 60, 70 other restaurants on the street. And it kind of felt like that with programmatic, not another programmatic company, because everyone saw the Lumascape and cluttered market. But for me, I think it's the same in any industry. As long as you deliver great value, a great product, and back it up with good service, you're going to have a business that scales. And I don't think that was different for us. And I do think it's that simple, actually. But you've just got to, what's not simple is building a great product, understanding how it's differentiated, being consistent at doing that, making sure it's good value for money. And then the service part is important. And all of that is underpinned by people. And mine and Lee's philosophy has always been the biggest asset in every business is its people. So your most energy, your most investment has to be delivered to your people. And we will say over deliver, like that's our mantra, over deliver for our people in any way we can. They'll end up building great products that over deliver for clients, and then your clients effectively over deliver for your business and pay the bills and grow you financially, which you then can put back into your people and create that sort of circle. And I think that is just been a sort of core part of our philosophy in business, really. And I think that's why we've been able to retain a lot of talent as well. And then as we've scaled, we've been able to attract a lot of talent as well.
And with any ad tech company, technology, product drives everything, right? In terms of having a great product and ultimately for salespeople to go out and talk about. Are you and your co-founder, do you have technical backgrounds, or did you have to hire someone immediately to build out the product? Talk about that journey.
Yeah, so I was more on the trading side, running campaigns, and Lee was more on the commercial sales side. So we had a good sort of yin and yang to get started, and that's how between the two of us, we never took funding. We got off the ground really, really quickly, and we had complementary skill sets so that we could grow the business, just two of us, to a pretty decent size before we started hiring. Um, one of our promises to clients was that, I would just say the best market research data for any brand is all the raw data under all their digital ads they buy. But when they buy digital ads, they just look at the ROI and what outcomes they got at the back of it. I was like, but someone should also surface the insights they got from it, because one impression is 500 different data points on that impression. You're buying billions. There's a lot of data there that you can extract a lot of insight from. But to do that, you need technology to be able to capture data science chops to be able to analyze and pull out trends. And then you need the engineering capability to make that really accessible for yourself and for clients. And me and Lee weren't like in that like software engineers or data scientists, but within a few months we went to India, into Bangalore, or Bengaluru now, it's called. And we knew that was the sort of epicenter for the next generation of big data management, data science techniques, open source techniques. And we just started hiring. One of our first employees was from there in the UK. She transferred over, and she then ended up just building out that business unit for us. And her husband actually become our CTO, who then really built out the technology infrastructure we have. And that's now 350 people, biggest office we have in the world. And that is, again, another foundational element of how we've been able to analyze data, find trends, then use that to buy more effectively, but also excite our clients through the insights we give them as well.
And was that that early bet to go to India and hire talent out there, more on the product side and the technical side, was that a scary experience? Was that because it's not like unless you move out there, it's quite difficult to kind of always be in constant contact with them. Was that quite a scary experience for you?
I think I remember when we did I'm born in England, but my family are from India and they're from the north. I was just like, it just felt quite nice to go to India and try do a business. So it was almost like, I'd say, like, even if, I don't know, some other country in the world was probably a bit better in terms of whether it's cheaper or more access to talent, I think we'd have still gone to India for the heart, really. So that was exciting, really exciting. It was like weird going to South India when I've been to North India a lot, big difference. And that was really noticeable straight away. I remember going on my first flight, my mum dropped me to the airport. I was a little bit like, what the hell am I doing? My mum was a little bit like, do you know what you're doing going to India and, trying to start a business up? But I was like, yeah, we'll figure it out. And we were lucky though that our first employee in London was from Bengaluru, and I think without her, it would have been much more difficult to do, because we had someone we trusted, one, but B, someone who knew me and Lee culturally and knew what kind of people first and over deliver for people kind of mantra. She took that there and installed that within the business straight away. And I think that for us was the silver bullet, really, of making sure it was a success. Um, but I think there was a passion to do it. And again, these things they feel more harder than they are, but when you get there, it's like, all right, you want to recruit people, right? Go and talk to people, convince a few people, they tell their mates, then you start building a team, and then as long as your business is growing and you can um, reinvest that growth back into the business and create that momentum, then it's good. But India's got its challenges. It's like a very competitive market for people. We're not the only ones doing that, right? Like every multinational is doing that, and it's a massive startup scene, so it's massive for talent out there.
And do you think it helped? Like you mentioned, you've grown quite organically, bit by bit, didn't really get investment early on. Do you think that's still applicable now for companies starting up? Or do you think, and do you think there are companies kind of really quickly going in and trying to get investment, from even before they start? How do you think it's helped you kind of growing organically?
I think for us, what I find in today's world is that there's some sort of like fundamental business practices that are kind of not that are now not even thought as normal, right? So with me, I was like, hey, you start a business, you make profit, you make sure you got the cash so people pay you, and you only live by that. You only make decisions, and your horizon of what you can do is totally governed by that, right? Which is thought of sort of nowadays is a bit old school and
Hmm.
things like that. Now it's like raise loads of money, you can lose it, and you sell the dream. And then the thing is, when you do that, though, you're raising money from people who will want to return quickly, and they'll just pass that risk on to somebody else, and the risk gets knocked out. And there's a lot of businesses that don't recover from that. They sort of start by building a business that probably doesn't make profit and doesn't generate cash. And so it's quite hard then to get your business to make profit and generate cash. Even culturally, that becomes hard. So I think we were kind of keen, like, we're starting to sort of live within our means and grow at the speed that our performance dictates, not grow at the speed that, you know, that's governed by, say, an investor's horizon, when they want their returns back and things like that. And I think that was important for us culturally. Because now, even though we might have sold some shares to private equity, etc., like that, what we're not doing is ever putting external money into the business to fuel growth. The business is completely self-sufficient in generating profit, making cash from that profit, and being able to invest within its means to sort of fuel whatever growth we deem is what we want to get. I do think we need to see more businesses with that sort of mentality versus needing that external injection to keep them alive. I think I think the industry got a little bit like it was really we were so on our own back in the day of a company with no investment. You know, it was like I don't really know many others.
I think
Everybody
still
was
to this
like,
day, right? I think even now, you think in the
mm,
last kind of year alone, you see all the M&As and the companies getting bought out and the funding rounds, etc.
yeah,
I'm guessing in some cases it's needed, but it's a good point actually. I can't think of anyone like MLQ that's just kind of like
yeah.
stood
I
their
mean,
ground.
like, it's the philosophy. Like, my mum and dad used to have a shoe shop in a town called Luton in the shopping centre there. And I just used to remember my mum like, oh, I can't pay this supplier. Called the supplier, be like, look, I can't pay you. Can I pay you in a week's time or something like that? I need Saturday sales to come and do that. And I was like, even I used to do that. Like, hey, like Ab Nexus, say, can you give me another 20 days? I'm just waiting for WVP to pay us. It's just like it's that philosophy of like just it's a different philosophy of running your business. And then I think culturally people are like, oh, okay, hold on a sec. We haven't got this sort of monopoly money
Mhm.
coming into the business that we can just throw away. We have to be quite smart and prudent with the decisions we make. And whether that was, you know, a seller in the old days going, hang on a minute, I'm not going to the most expensive restaurant. I'm going to the pub on the corner and actually I can do 20 quid. I could buy 4 or 5 pints for somebody and that'd be enough. It was just that mentality. I think it was important for us to have that. And it's difficult as you get bigger because then you get bigger, your numbers are bigger. We're very transparent with how much profit we make and things like that to our team. And people think, but you've got to keep a little bit of that DNA, certainly as you scale.
Yeah, and the culture starts from the top, right? And you can't expect certain
Yeah.
things from your team if you've not already embedded that culture. So I'm guessing the culture at MiQ is the same. Would you say across markets, you've got this overarching culture, and then do you adapt it and change it for each market? How's the culture within MiQ?
Yeah. I think, the values really, which are the sort of behaviors that people exhibit, are very consistent, I would say, across markets. Obviously, there's different nuances of what motivates people and the norms in other markets, but I think our values are like courage, take risks, agility, be quick to adopt to different things, don't be afraid of change, be passionate about what you do to clients. If you're not passionate, you probably shouldn't be working somewhere where you're not passionate about it. We talk a lot about unity, like, it's much more fun and purposeful to do things in teams than as sort of individuals. And then determination, it's like, it's hard. Don't be worried if it's hard. You've got to figure it out. And I think that's very consistent, and I think that has remained within the business. But certainly things like, the way in which I would say culture has to evolve and enhance, not change, you know. And I think, society is changing now, the people want different things. We've made a big push in things like inclusion, anti-racism. There's things we do now that we just weren't aware we should have done years ago, but we should have been aware years ago and done that. And it would have made the environment better. Not to say it's bad, it's just it would have made it even better. But that's kind of things you learn as things progress. And you just got to, not, again, it's agility, you've not got to be afraid for a bit of change. But it's more of an evolution than a cultural shift, I would say.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I'm going to put the limelight on you a little bit. As a founder in AdTech, what's your typical day for you? Wake up in the morning to when you go to sleep. What's your day to day?
The great thing is I used to travel all the time, like around all the world, around all the locations. But the pandemic's been good at just grounding me at home. So I get up at 7, I cook my son breakfast, feed him breakfast, get him changed, drive him to school, and back by 9. I do that. And then, yeah, I sort of more focus on the more strategic things now at work rather than get bogged down in day to day. Like, I don't look at the daily sales numbers anymore, and things like that. We've got a massive team. And when you hire a big team of senior people, you need to let them do their thing. You can't get in their way too much. You've got to be there to help them. And you've got to think you work for them. And like, all right, if you need me, I'll do it. But then you're sort of focusing, okay, I always try to focus on what's the long-term thing. So I might, I don't know, engage in other companies in this space we find interesting. Could we partner with them? Could it be a acquisition target for us? Culturally, I would like to stay connected with people. So I'll spend a lot of my week just catching up with people all over the world at various levels within the organization. And then we have our sort of set stuff where, you might have like, your standard weekly meeting or monthly board meeting, etc., like that. So between, doing strategic tasks, connecting with our people and our sort of regular business rhythm, you kind of stay quite busy, really. And then you want to, connect externally as well as much as you can and find out what's going on. But there's loads of things to figure out. So some days it might just be like, okay, I really need to understand the different layers of anonymous ID targeting in a post-cookie world. It's like, okay, all right, there's context, right? Who are the major players there? Cool. All right, how do we leverage IP? What's the privacy regulation? Sometimes you're back to studying almost and just trying to figure stuff out and doing your research. You can spend a lot of your time doing that as well on some of the more unknown things that might be happening.
That's a good point, actually. I think all of us are kind of head down thinking about the company, thinking about, making money or operational efficiencies, depending on what department you're in. But we're not studying enough, right? We're not looking at the industry, looking at where the industry is going, and then actually using those insights to impact not only the jobs that we work at, but our careers as well. Do you think that's important to do as well, to constantly be studying and educating yourselves? And do you think it differs from seniority? So do you find, at a more senior level, you've got more time to study, or is it the other way around? Great to hear
I
you.
think I think when you've got day-to-day deadlines, I think it's very hard to be strategic and very hard to think like, you know, beyond, your nose really. Like you just head down in it all. But I think as an organization, you need to make sure there's people that don't have that pressure on the day-to-day side that are focusing on that, and that's strategy roles or certain leadership roles. Um, because it depends what you like. My goal is I want MIQ to be around for 1, 2, 3 decades. I think we can be around 50 years, 100 years from now, if as long as we keep our strategy. But to do that, you've got to understand what could happen. Okay, have I got to play in these 10 scenarios? What's my play in each one? That takes a bit of time, and you need to be away from the pressure of day to day to really be able to do that. But as a founder, you can only really be away from the data if you absolutely trust the people who are in it, and that's not always easy to do that. But I feel fortunate that the team we have is world class, and they're motivated and they do a great job,
That's amazing.
and that gives me time to free myself up. Really.
No, that's amazing. If you didn't set up MIQ, where do you think you'd be right now? Do you still think you'd be within the industry? Do you think you would have moved industries? Have you ever thought about this?
No, I think I would have. Yeah, I'd have stayed in AdTech. I was in AdTech before I started MIQ. I think I would have just tried to do something innovative within whatever company I was working for. I've got a feeling I'd have probably been in more of the sort of start. I'd have tried to find a company, probably like MIQ, independent, founder led and growing fast, really, and global. I think that would have ticked my boxes. But I would have stayed in this industry for sure because it's like when we were growing up, it was almost like all our uncles and that were in IT, and it was like, oh, IT is the thing you need to get into, it's the new thing, and I always remember people saying, whenever you graduate uni, try find the next thing that's going to explode, and anything to do with the internet was it, I think, in my generation. And so I think I would have stuck in this industry because and the good news is continuing to do that. I think the journey is quite long. It's interesting now, what are those trends and what would people, should they get into? And you've got just the gaming opportunity, I think is big. The metaverse stuff, I think you need to really try and get your head around that, and see where that's going. But there's always something, 'cause-
And it's an exciting place to be, right? It's constantly innovating. There's, you know, you would have heard the year of the mobile about a billion times, a year of video, year
yeah,
of native, and now gaming, like you said, metaverse and influencer marketing, and there's tons of different ways
yes.
of looking at it, and it's all evolving. Um, what would your advice be for people who are thinking of starting a business in ad tech, and yeah, starting that journey like you did, 11, 12 years ago?
I would say do it. I think the reality is like the worst case scenario is never that bad. It's like, let's say you do it and it didn't work. It's like you'd be much more employable for taking that experience than you were if you didn't do it, because you'd have learned so much. You'd have learned stuff mentally as well as practically. Um, And so, I think not everybody has the desire and that bug to want to. I think you've got to know yourself a little bit. And well, do I like having just the sort of the protection or the comfort of things that a business brings to you as an individual, or am I okay with living without some of those comforts or givens? And I really want to go. And you've got to commit though. That one thing I would say is like when people talk about side hustle and all this stuff, it's like if you're going to make it work, you will be all in. You know, it's not going to work like that. Or certainly won't scale if you're not all in. And I think so. I would say if you feel like it represents who you are and you can cope with what the uncertainty that comes with running your own business, certainly at the start, um, and you have got the time and your surroundings, whether it's your responsibilities, when I started a business, I was living with my wife, my mum, my brother, his wife, his kids, all in the same house. I didn't have big responsibilities really. I had a good infrastructure around me to take risks now. But my business partner, yeah, he just had his second kid, a mortgage, and things like that. So it can work both ways, right? But as long as you're comfortable with that infrastructure you have around you and it gives you that freedom, then I'd say do it because the worst case scenario is like it doesn't work and you're much more employable. Makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I was actually just about to ask that because we're in our industry. We're always talking to peers in the industry, and people are always talking about side hustles and thinking of the best next idea. And most night, as 99% is just idea. It's just that 1% you really, like you said, you need to go out and be all in. So yeah, have you seen that happen enough, or do you still think there's a lot of talk in the industry, and just not even the industry, just in people in general, and then not enough people actually putting actions to those words?
No, I think there's a lot of still startup activity in the industry. Um, I think sometimes it can be quite niche. People sometimes get bugged by, I go back to my Charlotte Street like examples, like, well, it's not, I don't know, a restaurant that specializes in sausage rolls. I don't know, so let's open a restaurant that only does. It's like, okay, if you do that, you're making your market so much smaller and your customer base smaller. So sometimes I do think people kind of get too focused on the differentiation of what's my like, silver bullet, what I do that nobody else does. And if you chase that too hard, you could create a very small market for you, or address your total addressable market might be small. You need components of that, but you need to make sure you mirror that with, you know, it's like have a restaurant that does everything, but make the sausage roll your signature, you know, something like that. And I think, and so what I see is people doing a lot of stuff, but maybe going too niche too quickly, and that means they can't scale financially. Um, but I still think there's a lot of people doing startups. I mean, and if people want funding with the government tax laws and there's these things called enterprise investment scheme, makes it really easy for people to raise money. And there's a lot of financial institutions now that have got money that they want to deploy. So I think that's helping people like go, okay, well, I can raise some money and I can, do it like that, etc.
Are there places to go for advice, and has that changed since when you started up? Did you have you mentioned the infrastructure at home, but did you have mentors or people within the industry that gave you advice early on? And yeah, if there's, if someone's listening to this podcast now, is there anywhere that they can go and kind of, bounce ideas or brainstorm with anyone, with more experience within the industry?
There's a lot of people with experience of either starting their own business or joining a business early and scaling it, or being in a big business and seeing a lot of problems. And there's a lot of people who love to have like non-exec or advisory type roles. And my advice has always been like find those people and integrate them into your business quickly. We did that very, very quickly. Me and Lee did with Richard Holman, who we used to work with back in the day. Then we hired a chairman who was a CEO, who used to work on one of the big agencies as an advisor. And these people are critical because when you're kind of stuck and you're not sure what to do, you just phone them and a lot of the time you get off that call and you've got a little bit more confidence about what you're going to do, a bit more conviction. But I would say that the best place is get advice from people who have got experience and who are motivated to give you advice. And there's a lot of people out there that fit that criteria.
And does that advice come for free? So I'm guessing at the early days you don't have money to give. So is it more in the share element, or is it kind of do a favor for me, I'll do a favor for you later down the road? Yeah, what advice would you give
Yeah, I mean
on that?
it depends what your financial situation. You could pay for that advice, or if your financial situation is that you don't have the cash flow to do that, then equity is always a good bargaining chip. Certainly in the early days, because and that equity, it's difficult to figure out what it should be. I sympathise for people like that. Well, what should I give them? But whatever you do, it will pay back. So don't overthink it. It's like it, you know, because the one thing when you start a business, you don't have that sort of boss or your boss's boss. You miss that because you don't have someone to lean on. Someone was looking out for you as well. And I think that's what good advisors do. Is they like, all right, I need to make sure you hit the goals that you set yourself, and I'm here to help you do that. And sometimes mentally, you just need someone to talk to. And that was certainly our experience. But we did that very, very early, and it was very, very successful. And even now, like the private equity partner we have, Tom, is incredible. He's been was he's been like one of the best people I've ever worked with in terms of just giving advice, sharp, on point, gets it, has experience where we don't. And he's really helped us make better decisions, which has ultimately grown our business.
Amazing. What's next for MiQ?
Like I said, I just want to be the best programmatic business out there, and by that, what I mean is, I want to make sure that when we run a campaign, we run it better than anyone else. We hit that outcome, whatever that is for that client, better than anyone else can. We back that up with great service. And secondly, I want to be quickest. I want to be like, whenever there's a new way of advertising, and the best way to buy that advert is programmatically. I want us to be the fastest at integrating that in. So perform the best and be the fastest at innovating new forms of running ad campaigns. And I think if you do that, we can be the best. And I think if we can be the best, then I think we've got a future as an independent business for many, many decades to come. Because as users consume media on a device connected to the internet, I do think buying the ad on that device or whatever that slot is, whatever screen or device it is, programmatically is the best way for the publisher and for the advertiser. And so I think that industry sustainability is long. And then if we can be one of the best in the industry at executing and innovating, then I think we've got a very, very long-term future as an independent business that sustains its growth. That's our goal.
It's amazing. And on that point, do you feel that there has been that programmatic adoption as fast as you would have liked? It'd be great to understand kind of your take on that.
Yeah, I'm very impressed with clients and publishers. In some of the offline medias, it's a little bit more like TV and audio and out of home, where there's sort of suppliers who have a lot of share of the space. Programmatic comes in bits and bobs. It's not necessarily the whole thing. And I think in certain markets as well, where the suppliers have more control, the old way of executing sometimes is preferred. That part, I understand it, but I think it still can be done more efficiently. But I think generally, yeah, the numbers speak for itself. It's like more money in advertising, digital's getting a higher share, and then programmatic's getting a higher share of how digital ads will. So I see that trend continuing.
Amazing. So we've got one final question we usually sign off each episode with. If you had a superpower in AdTech, what would it be?
If I had a superpower in AdTech world, what would it be? That's a good question.
Can be anything, literally anything.
I would love to do a sort of at scale cross device and cross channel measurement. Like really make it simple to be like, saw the ad on the mobile, watched the TV ad, saw it on a desktop, walked into the store, bought it, for that to be seamless.
How far away from that, do you think?
I think we can do it. It's just and I think not too far. I think not too far, but I think it's just the data science chops and engineering chops to do it now. It means it's really only a small amount of companies I think that can do that. But I would love that to be more seamless for the whole industry.
Well, if your product and data team are listening to this podcast episode, they know what their next project is, right?
Yeah, they're on it. They're always on it.
They're always on it.
It's just, yeah.
Amazing. Well, that's all we've got time for today. So thank you, Gurman, for your time on the podcast episode. It's been great chatting to you.
Yeah, I really appreciate inviting me. Yeah, thanks a lot.